Welcome to the session. I have deliberately called it out as a chat on networking because that's what I'm really hoping that this is. I will start with my own journey. Growing up or being at university, etc., I was always the kind of a person who was attracted to performing arts, stage, public speaking, those sorts of things, right? So when I got into work, I thought, right, okay, this whole networking thing is probably going to come very naturally to me because I like this side of things, like I was just explaining. But I was in for a big surprise. I think many of us have found ourselves in that situation where we perhaps are in a big event or a big conference, and there's this sense of awkwardness, or where do I start the conversation? What if the conversation ends abruptly? And I have been in those situations, especially in the early parts of my career. So, despite being an extroverted person who likes public speaking, who loves the limelight of the stage, I was miserably failing at networking. So, I knew I had to do something about it. At the same time, at work, at university, people couldn't talk enough about networking. So they would always say that whether you have to land the right next opportunity, whether you have to progress in your career and grow, networking is the number one thing. So it felt like, okay, this is one of those things that I must take deliberate steps towards and improve as I go. And I think I can say that it's not something which happened overnight, but over a period of time and with some deliberated practice, I did get better at this. So I've tried to summarize some of my thoughts on that, and please feel free to interrupt me if you feel like there's something which you want to ask on a specific topic, or we could leave the questions towards the end, whatever works better. Is the slides moving? No, I think I might have to do the next one here. Hopefully, you can see my first slide, which calls out as Networking 101. I think the first thing is identifying a hook or a niche. So being very deliberate and conscious in your efforts. And this may come with goals you have in mind. This may come with the industry you're targeting. This may come with the transition you're targeting. So I think it's quite obvious. However, having an A4 plan always helps. So be very deliberate and conscious in your networking efforts. However, at the same time, it's quite important, I feel like, to seek genuine connections. I have found over the years that people that are genuinely connected with, it's not like I have to talk to them every week to keep the network fresh, but people I made genuine connections with sort of turned out to be the ones which are more everlasting, and it's been a case of mutual benefit. So that piece is something I would advise everybody to keep in mind, and always kind of trust your instinct or gut in these matters as well. I did say about having some goals that you would like to create for yourself. So your networking goals obviously must be related to your career goals. So have those in mind. But equally, I think having an open mind is very important because you don't know what you may discover out of a conversation. So don't be surprised that if you're in a toddler and a mum group, but suddenly you've come across you were networking and talking about nappies and formula milk, but suddenly your conversation has shifted to product management or digital transformation because you found out that this person does very similar work like you. So be very open minded, believe in the power of serendipity, and just keep cultivating those networks. On role models, I would say success for sure rubs in. It's not cliche when people say that you kind of some of the kind of people you surround yourself with. So this is something which everybody should make a deliberate effort on. Um, and it's not just your short-term goals, you should also be equally conscious of your mid-term and long-term goals. So let's break that down. So let's say that in the long term, you're hoping to be a VP of digital transformation for an organization, then your aim should be to find, and I'm going to use the term personas, people who are actually doing that currently, and you find a smart hook to engage them and have things going with them. And equally kind of work your way backwards and work with people who are akin or fit with your midterm goals and also the short term goals. What are you expecting to do over 1 to 2 years? And like anything in life, so people who've been there, done that, experience teaches a lot. And in this whole process, what I have observed is that people who are actually very ambitious in their long term thinking, more often than not, they actually end up doing what they said or thought, or this popular term these days, manifested a few years back. So I have seen people in my organization who today are CIOs, what have you, but I have seen them create a personal development plan right in front of my eyes 10 years back and then work through this strategy of lateral networking, the next level up networking, and then the long term networking. So, in this way, you kind of are also breaking down your goals and getting smart about networking your way rather than trying to wade your way through an ocean. There is some proven research also about something called as dormant ties. And this is something which I've seen, but equally it's come up in Harvard Business Review research as well, is that people with who you've had connections in the past. Let's say you were working for organization X and you were working with Mr. Y, but you've kind of lost connection in between. But now you are in a place where you need their advice, or you're looking for a role which they may potentially have, or whatever your goal is. It doesn't have to be very transactional. If you reach out to these dormant ties, the success rate of answers tends to be high. And I do appreciate if you are in the initial parts of your career, this may be harder, right? Because you might be just 2 years in or 3 years in. But hang in there as you grow through your career. Don't forget about your dominant ties. And I'll give you an example. I was quite fascinated by this idea of portfolio careers. Like it's something which has been going on through my head for the last 6 months to a year. And lo and behold, I found an ex colleague of mine who had posted something about portfolio careers, and I have not spoken to him in 4 years. I had not spoken to him in 4 years, but I reached out to him because I know that we made a connect whenever we worked together, although we were parts of different teams. So I was working in technology, this person was somebody from finance, but he is a dormant tie. I reached out to him, and believe me, within 15 minutes, I got so many insights from this person because they're actually practicing this whole portfolio careers idea. And I got so many tips. I probably would have spent 6 months figuring that out by myself, what I learned from my colleague within 15 minutes. So be very conscious of the right kind of dormant ties. You will know it. So again, that whole power of intuition, or it kind of starts to kick in as well. On a different thread, I know that some people feel like, oh, networking is very transactional. I don't feel very comfortable with it when I have to just ask for something. And that can happen, right? Some people are not extremely comfortable with that. So I think for such people, I would say maybe you need to start more with the mindset of providing help. So you may want to think about the kind of things that you think you're good at, or people tell you that you're good at. And you might just go ahead and provide help instead of seeking it in the first instance, and therefore you're drawn into that, right? It could be CV reviews. It could be, I'm just making this up, but I know if you're targeting a certain organization, they have certain types of interviews. You may have a group of friends who may do a consulting interview practice with you, or you may be part of that who's providing that kind of a help to a friend who wants to get there. So if you are not a person who's an easy taker, you can start off by being a big giver and ease yourself into that whole thing. And I'm going to call it networking karma because I have seen it to be true. And it's obviously a long term game. As you support others, you will kind of see that these things kind of snowball, and there's a positive snowball effect. And something which will take a bit of an effort, but if I wish I had implemented this earlier on in my career than sort of in the later parts. But it sounds like, oh, why not? But it doesn't come that easily, is make yourself visible and participate in internal and external communities of practice. I think firstly, but the fact that all of you are here and you're part of the Reed Technology Network is amazing. So likewise, just figure out for yourself which are those right industry forums, which are those right communities of interest, or practice inside and outside the organization, and feel brave enough to put your name out there. For example, you may be an Excel champion, right? That's what you do. And believe me, you may to yourself think, oh, this is just Excel. Whoever doesn't know about Excel. But there might be tens and tens of people in the organization who actually don't know that. So be very deliberate and confident in understanding your own skill sets and giving that out to the organizational universe, or also the universe which kind of is outside of your organization. And in doing that, you are creating a positive personal brand. And again, as we remind ourselves, this is a long term game. So, but believe me, one thing leads to another in networking as well, as many of you already know. There is something about this whole concept of super connectors. I have seen it in theories on networking, but I have found it to be extremely true. These are the people who are naturally gifted. Like everything in life, there is always somebody who will have a skill which is better than yours, right? So, and I'm Kevin, I'm going to pick on you. So, and in a very good way, like I'll call you a super connector because you are the kind of person who is networked across industries, across the board. So we need to be deliberate and conscious enough to identify super connectors, identify them, attach ourselves with that in a positive way that we can contribute. But this is one tip which I wanted to throw in the mix there, that you just need to be deliberate about, okay, these are the people who have that ability to glue people together, draw a meaningful conversation, and then, of course, drive outcomes out of it. So never forget your super connectors. And thank you, Kevin, for doing what you do. One tip I'll add here is networking is for all seasons. So it's not something that you just do in your job hunting season, or you know that you're coming to the end of your contract and you just frantically start networking. Obviously, then it feels more panicky. Hey, what if my conversations or my cold calls don't lead up to anything? So remind yourself that networking is for all seasons. And like anything, like you've heard of the innovation hour in organizations, right? Where a part of the day or part of the week is dedicated to innovating. And so if you're serious about your career, I think you have to find the time to have that networking hour in your calendar, whether that's inside or outside of your work hours, however you want to fit it in. It could be blogs, it could be cold calls, and obviously this is not the time to be shy. So even on cold calls, sometimes if you are polite and you're making the right kind of demeanor and approach, it can lead to things. And I've seen it's not easy, right? It's not easy. I think it's one of the harder ones, but we just need to be open-minded one more time. One more thing I did figure out is, of all the networks, your school network, your educational network, your university network, your ex-colleagues network, your mom's network, your dad's network, what have you, I personally found that your educational network and your ex-colleagues network, like there is something about once you left the organization, even people you didn't think were going to help you while you all were together in the organization, they actually, there is that positivity which starts coming out. There is a sense of camaraderie that I have seen through people who have perhaps studied with in university or otherwise. I can give you an example. I reached out to somebody yesterday who's part of the same university that I was on a different topic related to infrastructure, cloud infrastructure. I don't actually know this person. It was a complete cold call, but they responded to me within 10 minutes because we share the same camaraderie, or we share the same brand, and therefore there was a positive response. So I've seen this to be very, very true. Please do to leverage that. And in the same context, research has suggested that the first degree contacts in LinkedIn is a bit obvious, but I think the most positive outcomes in terms of jobs, specifically in this instance, because networking is not just about jobs, it's a lot more, is the second degree contacts in LinkedIn often work magic. And the second piece to remember here is the LinkedIn algorithm. The kind of people you want to connect with, the kind of topics you not need to learn more about, start posting out. And I think the algorithm is quite logically set up in that if you are the kind of a person who is liking or commenting, you get less bonus points in that sense. There is a whole lot of research on this, and there's a whole lots of newsletters on how LinkedIn works and how you can get the most out of it. I just gave you one example. Equally, if you post out more, not surprisingly, you get more bonus points or you get more enriched feedback. As an example, if I have the dream to speak at a digital transformation conference for oil and gas, then maybe I need to start putting out snippets or learning bites to that effect, do the right kind of hashtags, and magically it will bring in the right kind of contacts, the right kind of content for you, and it works its charm. So be very cognizant of the LinkedIn algorithm and make it work to your favor. And like I was saying earlier, there is something about creating a positive personal brand. I couldn't stress this enough, but equally a brand recall as well. And I'll give you a very small example, and I'll be very happy to actually for all of this, I'll be very, very happy to hear examples from yourselves in terms of what resonates. Have you seen this work for you? What would you pick out of this as you leave today, or would you pick nothing? That's okay as well. But I'll share one example. When I left one of the organizations I used to work for, they had a number of people who had formed this ex-colleagues network that I'm talking about. And they asked me to come and talk about a specific topic, and I did. And in this instance, it was about job search, an example. But I think the word got out. And because I made an effort, I made a deliberate effort, and I was kind of not consciously, but subconsciously working towards my networking karma. I kind of created a personal brand there, right? Okay, if I want tips on this particular topic, Nidhi is a good person to reach out to. And I started getting more out of that conversation. I got to know 5 or 10 people more who in turn benefited me in different ways and different outcomes. So yeah, that whole story about that personal brand, but more importantly how people recall your personal brand is quite important. And I think some of the speakers in the Women in Technology Forum are doing that, right? So when I think of some of them, if I think of um, a program management, or if I think of service management, already I have a brand recall of a few people who I know have presented at WIT, or who I know post on that topic on LinkedIn. So when I think A, I kind of make a mental association. Oh yeah, this person is quite active about service management. I'm going to go drop Paul a question about that. So that connection, try and get that connection in people's heads on the kind of topics you want to be known for. Brand recall. And I think more than anything else, the whole power of serendipity. Always believe in that. There's always that chance encounter. And like I was talking about the mums network. So always keep your elevator pitch ready, crisp, and impactful. And for all of us, I think that the whole piece about practicing eloquent speech, practice makes perfect. This is something we can all keep working on, but this is something which definitely obviously is very valuable from a networking standpoint and making an impact when you're meeting people. I also found this new thing is this about sometimes there are people in your organization, whether you're still working there or you left the organization. There is this piece about secret admirers. Like sometimes you don't even know, but there will be people out there who have learned from you, have not necessarily said it to you, and may come back after 3 years and say something. So something like this luckily happened for me very recently, where somebody I've worked with in the past came back and had very kind comments about some of the work I was doing in a completely different sphere. But now that I got to know that, I sort of think, okay, this is the connection I was not aware was a positive connection for me, but I know that futuristically this is something I want to work on and keep warm, right? So you will have a set of people who you will know that you have good connections with, and then for lack of a better word, there's this whole thing about secret admirers. In the same thought, I will also put it out there. Sometimes it does happen that you think you had a great connection with somebody in terms of your work relationship, etc., but you may not get what you were expecting that person to give you. So, very simple example. So, let's say that somebody you thought you were working very well with, and when you left the organization, you asked them to write you a LinkedIn recommendation, nothing comes. That's okay. So I think with the secret admirers, balance out the ones where you will get no response. So it's all a game, and keep it in your stride in that sense. So it works both ways. Um, on small talk versus deep conversations, I think this is a very interesting one, and I have personally seen it to be true. So obviously, you don't want to make people uncomfortable. So in some context, the conversation will be relatively superficial. It's probably, as we like here in the UK, it'll be weather centric. That's mandatory. We'll start off there. And in some instances, the conversation will just be superficial, and that's okay. But if people kind of make a deeper conversation and kind of open up, and perhaps start talking about an area that they are looking for advice on, or anything which is more meaningful, then there is more of a connect, because you see that the other person is putting themselves out there. So you are the best judge in the context in the room, but just be aware that deeper conversations lead to better outcomes. Research suggests that, and I'm sure you've seen that in your experiences as well. There is a point which I wanted to make. I think there's a lot of literature out there on cultural fluency, but I have seen it work like magic when you're trying to make new friends, or just get into a, for example, let's say that you've transitioned from country A to country B. It's nothing about being, it's not like you have to be pretentious or you have to be somebody else. Not at all. That's not what the idea is. I'll give you a quick, this is one of the examples which came to my head, and that's kind of a macro level networking, or a macro level influence. But I can't see why that can't be true for us at a micro level networking, right? So um, this is not political at all. This is just one example I'm picking on from an individual. It could be anyone else as well. But what I have seen is that the Indian Prime Minister, India is a very, very diverse country, and you have people from different states, people who speak a multitude of languages, but this person is very good at making a connect across borders, and we can do that across organizations. That kind of a mindset we need to keep in mind. He will start off a speech, right, if he's in X part of the country, with a little bit of text which comes from the local language there, and immediately he has the crowd's attention, because they well know that this is not a language that comes native to him. So yeah, that whole cultural fluency and being respectful while being authentic. I think it's very, very important to be authentic. You cannot lose yourself. You cannot come across as a phony. You cannot come across who's somebody who's trying to be pretentious. But as someone who's there, and kind of trying to do what the Romans do, sort of a scenario in a good way. And one more example, I have worked in India, UK, and a number of different places, but I've worked in a country where English was not the primary language. So I made obviously I was not going to learn the language. I had to work in that country, and you could use translators and what have you. But I did make a deliberate effort to learn some of the language, at least the just to get myself around the office. And I realized that in that process, I did end up making a lot of friends. I did end up making a lot more smiles than I was otherwise expecting to. Sometimes it might be a question of breaking down that language barrier a little bit, and doing that cultural piece in a very authentic way. Authentic is something I do want to emphasize. Um, Another thing I did think that I'd talk about today is role play. So for some people, networking might be daunting, and that's okay. Like anything else, it comes with practice. So do not feel shy to practice role play with colleagues you're more comfortable with, your friends, spouse, sibling, whoever. I think role play does help a lot. Consulting interviews, or just a networking conversation, anything. Pick your dummy, and do a bit of a role play. It's something which will help you get in the groove of things, in my opinion. Last but not the least, in this list of things, I've got some practical examples as well, a little bit. But one analogy which came to my mind, I was thinking through this, is that networking is like fitness, right? It's something which you have to do all through your career. So it's not like I became very good at networking in 2021 and voila, that's it, I'm done. No, it's not going to work out like that. Exactly like fitness, it's not something that you'll get overnight goals done or results from. It is a long haul. And again, just like fitness, consistency matters. and that whole networking karma. Always have your goals and outcomes in minds, of course, but be genuine, be open-minded, and sometimes serendipity also plays an amazing part. But more importantly, do it, right? So make yourself available as part of the industry forums. If data is your thing, and I'm just making it up, and you're from the oil and gas industry, go join the Subsurface Data Universe forum. There are tens and tens of forums out there like this, and there's a obviously with IP and regulations and everything else in mind, there's a lot of give and take you can do. If you're a coder, obviously you can go towards the whole open concepts and so forth. There's a multitude of things, find your right fit as we go. I did want to just give some practical tips, which can sometimes it not be very obvious, but especially when we get into a job, all of us with our personal commitments as well, we can get so busy that some of these things we can easily forget. So reach out to your boss's boss. Like I was 6 months down in this organization before I even reached out in a more formal way or a connected way to my boss's boss. And I think I thought I knew about this because I learned it over the years. So this is, yeah, reach out to them. Again, think of the hook. Be prepared for the conversation, put yourself out there, reach out to your line manager's peers, right? Oftentimes obviously you need to have a very good relation with your line manager, that's a given, but equally reach out to their peers in that. So laterally you're reaching out upwards as well. And more often than not, luckily these days organizations tend to be very matrix rather than very hierarchical, but obviously play your cards smartly and just don't be pigeonholed in. It's very easy to keep doing what you're doing within your team and do that very, very well. But how do you expand? How do you learn new things, get newer skills, or look out for other opportunities? Sometimes you might be more comfortable in expanding laterally. So people who are doing roles like yourselves, but perhaps in a completely different domain. So let's say somebody who is part of an engineering team in a development cohort is connecting with somebody at the same level in finance. And in that conversation, they may exchange ideas which they hadn't thought of before. And the kind of brainstorming which comes from people who are perhaps doing similar roles but different domains, it can enrich the conversation. Another example is you might be product development, but go and connect off with the sales team, so to speak. So just kind of do go lateral if you're more comfortable like that, but find people who are not exactly doing your thing, and so that you kind of really pushing yourself deliberately out of echo chambers, right? So that's the idea. And this idea is quite old, but I would call it even fresh today, is this whole piece about reverse mentoring. So do not be afraid that if you are relatively new in your career, you are less than 5 years or coming up to that point, organizations and leaders oftentimes really value reverse mentoring because they might not know something which you are able to bring to the table. And a simple example of that is with the newer demographics mix in the organization. I'm sure the millennials have a lot to learn from the Gen Zs, and the Gen Zs have a lot to learn from the Gen Xs and so forth. So I'm trying to compartmentalize it a little bit, but it just means that it doesn't always go top down. It's not like you can always offer as well, even though you might be relatively junior in the organization. And I have seen people actually I have seen people who were earlier in their career, but were very comfortable with this whole idea of reverse mentoring and putting themselves out there. They've done exceptionally well in their career. I can certainly think of one or two examples like that. So something I would say you want to think about. And always kind of be prepared. You know how this is a scenario where you're there, and it's whether it's a big event, small event, what have you. Let's put ourselves in an open-ended conversation, right? So instead of saying what's your current role and then there's a awkward pause, it's perhaps good to be prepared with more open-ended questions. What do you most enjoy about your role today? What's most amazing about your role today? Did you always know you'll get here? You're the CIO of this amazing organization. Did you have a vision? How did you get here? What were your top obstacles? What were your top challenges? What did you enjoy most? How did you balance out family, kids, your professional career, aging parents, what have you? Because what I realize more and more is that although we all appear to be different, but some of the challenges across our lives tend to be very similar. So all of us will have challenges related to aging parents at some point. So it's better to learn from people who are kind of slightly older than you. And I have this, I wish I was doing it very well myself. I think I'm guilty of not doing it so well myself. But I have found that there's this +10 rule or +7 rule that plays in my head. If you network with people who are perhaps 7 years ahead of you in age, or even 10 years ahead of you in age, you get the sweet spot of not having a huge generational difference, but at the same time, you get a lot of benefit of their experiences. So treat it as a hypothesis, but I found this hypothesis to be true, kind of a +5, +7, +10 rule. People kind of in your kind of field, but with that kind of age experience, it really has that sweet spot of learning from them. And this is something I personally want to get better at as well. And I want to end with this. Like, I think for networking, self belief is extremely important. No matter how small, big your skills are, appear confident, have a friendly demeanor, and start to get in a place that you are comfortable with initiating conversations, and a kind of also being comfortable with silence. So it's not like silence can be awkward, right? If there is no one speaking, perhaps we need to be okay with that for a few seconds, and something will happen out of it. So we all try to fill those silent gaps, but that's okay. I think getting comfortable with silence, again, practicing your elevator pitch, catching your right dummies, practicing it out, doing the role play, your self-belief piece, no matter where you're in the organizational ladder right now. And to the self-belief, I do want to reiterate that point about people who I have seen start at a certain level, but really believe that they could be +10 and write it down on their personal development plans. They have actually converted it versus somebody like, oh, I don't think so. I didn't see myself as the chief product officer, or well, isn't that too big a shot? That's really a moonshot. I say go for the moonshots, because they do tend to happen when you actually start thinking in that direction and positively tell yourselves that, yeah, this is going to happen. I can do it. So, Kevin, I'm going to stop there. I don't know. I've just tried to summarize my takeaways, my experiences, but I do want to stop there and see from the group if they found this useful, anything they might want to share examples of, like from some of this, or anything which is completely different, and tips they want to share with others as far as networking goes.
Yeah, thanks, Nidhi.
I'm so sorry. I'm so enthusiastic about that. I was just going to talk right all over you by complete accident. I apologize. You go for it.
Jenny, go on.
I was just going to say, I found that tremendously helpful. Thank you so much. Like a lot of people, networking is something that you don't get to do all the time, although you kind of do now, because you've set a way that it can kind of become a habit, and you can become a bit more intentional about it. It's one of those things I always think I should be doing more of, don't know how to do it, but you've actually turned it into tangible ideas, which can be done incrementally. You can just do a bit, always be thinking about it, but you don't have to spend hours and hours on it. And I also really like the fact that you made the point about being authentic, and the deeper the connections, the better. Because I like to operate in quite an authentic way, and I always worried that actually other people prefer something that's more transactional, and that maybe I should be more transactional, but actually the opposite is true. So that is reassuring. And if I can offer one thing, if this is at all helpful to anybody, from some podcast I was listening to the other day on the way to work, I can't even remember what it was now. There was a guy saying there as well about like setting yourself a little target, particularly if you're nervous about it. So if you go to a conference, you just want to make one decent connection, or target one person. If you're scared, just do that, and then build up your confidence. And the same with like online, if you're trying to even build up your LinkedIn connections and you want to connect with some people who are sort of dormant in your life, just do it. And you can always stomach, even if you feel you get a little bit of rejection, you can cope with a little bit of it at a time, but you'll build up your confidence. So you're almost gamifying it a little bit. I don't know if that's helpful to anybody. That helps me to break things down sometimes. But anyway, thank you. That was great. I will pipe down now, but really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Love that piece about target of at least connecting with one person. I'll remember that.
So what I was going to say, Nidhi, And actually drawing on the point Jenny made there about networking is not something we get to do all the time. But actually, I think the way you present it today is that networking is probably something we build up in our heads as being this big thing, when actually it's just building relationships with new people. So networking, if you adopt that mentality that everyone you speak to, you're going to be networking with, you're going to be trying to build some form of relationship with them, and then think what are the best ways to do that. And for me, there's two key elements that you mentioned. One is have a very clear personal brand. And by that, I mean, make sure that whatever your personal brand is really easily communicates to the people you're going to meet what it is you're trying to achieve. It might just be that I'm lucky to be surrounded by great people in this network, but I find that people like helping people. And the clearer it is to them what you're trying to achieve, the more likely it is they'll be able to offer you some help in that direction. You know, even if it's like, from a sales perspective, Jenny, you're talking about attracting people that you can, leverage for tenders and things. I think they'd rather you're honest with that and say, this is what I do. It'd be really great to connect to people like you, because I'm trying to build this network, and they'd be like, oh yeah, great, I'll keep an eye out for opportunities for you in that space. Whereas if you're kind of, I'm going to try and befriend you, and then at some point go, aha, I'm trying to use you in a pitch, like it's less authentic that way. And then the second part, which is key to what Nidhi said, is absolutely the easiest way I found to network is ask the question, if it's an in-person event, why is it you're here? On the Friday calls that we have, we always start by asking people to introduce themselves and say, what is it that they're trying to achieve? Because it's by far the easiest way for me to follow up then is, hey, I remember you said you were trying to get from here to here. I know somebody that does this, or I found this article that's useful to you, or I've got a bit of advice here, and just show that you're contributing to their journey, and then they will reciprocate. So yeah, that's my 2 pence. Shri, your hand's up.
First of all, thanks, Nidhi. There were lots and lots of good tips, and apologies, I've joined the call a bit late, but I'll try to go through all the deck, and it was really, really awesome. So thank you for that. Personally, what I have started is, for me to get the confidence and start talking with people in networking, I started traveling without headphones. Try to sit in a train without headphones, without being busy in your own world. Try to say what is happening around you and try to make a human conversation. That is how you would start talking or understanding how people are, how to start a conversation. You might learn something which might, which you might surprise yourself. Today in the morning when I was commuting to the office, I sat beside a ex-college professor, and she was on her way to meet a friend. Like, it really need not to be something intentional. Just go ahead, just take that step and start conversation. And you don't know how it turn into. And you don't know how wonderful people are, and you don't know who you are going to touch the next time. So I read in some book, and you would only make that journey once. I don't know whether I would lead that, or talk that to that wonderful lady again or not. So why not just go ahead when the world is giving an opportunity, go ahead and start talking to people. And then you don't know what comes back. So yeah, that's my 2 pence, I guess.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much. I really enjoyed that as well. Nidhi. I wondered if you had any advice on kind of what's your regular routine. So like, do you sit down once a week and think about who you're seeing? How do you kind of approach that in a kind of, maybe I'm a bit like, I'm a geek. I love processes and Kanban boards and planning everything. I'm just like operationalizing it. I think because really once you've operationalized it, you relieve the cognitive load a little bit, don't you? You've got a habit that you kind of are able to repeat. So what's your habit? And then once you've got a connection, what do you do with it then? How do you kind of decide where you invest your time and maintain it?
Absolutely. And process is excellent, right? Because to really excel in networking or any of the softer areas, it's a science and an art, equally an art and a science. So if you ask me personally, I probably spend 15 minutes every day on networking. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you a process and a tool. So my biggest thing is LinkedIn. I really try and input the algorithm in terms of what I want out of it. So I'm always reading product management blogs every day, subscribe to some of those podcasts, newsletters through LinkedIn. I've made cold calls. I quite like someone who used to make industry presentations. I've reached out to them and talked to them about specifically on B2B product marketing. And they happily talked to me for 30 minutes, gave me some really good tips that I have walked away with through LinkedIn. Completely don't know this person otherwise, but they were kind enough to talk me through it. And sometimes you just obviously have to be respectful of people's time. If they don't answer, they don't answer. So I do that. But I think my process is really daily. If I'm working, I just do spend 15 minutes on LinkedIn whenever I find an opportunity and think about, do I want to know more about portfolio careers, or do I want to know more about topic X? Who should I reach out to? But I think beyond LinkedIn, I would say some of these newsletters these days as well are quite popular. They're snippet based, they're not very long, so easy to digest, but you get ideas out of it. Like in product, for example, some of the famous names like Lenny's podcast or some of the others, just going through that, you may come across a bunch of people who work in organization X or Y. One thing leads to another, and you just reach out through a second connect. Sometimes, if you're lucky, you find a second connect. If not, just reach out and try your luck. I think it's all about not being disappointed. Like, we don't put all our eggs in one basket, and if it doesn't work out, that's okay. We need to have that childhood kind of a resilience back in then, that it was not the right fit, or it's them, not me. I don't know, however you want to train your mind, but I would say short and frequent is what I would say.
Thank you. That's wonderful. Thank you.
Cheers.
I was just, if no one's going to jump in there, I was just going to say, sometimes my neurodiversity means when I'll start, I'll be there for an hour and a half trying to kind of, I don't know if it's neurodiversity or perfectionism or what, but then I'll be there, want to do it all. And I think then you land up, okay, it's taking me away from my work. So I kind of put it off until I've got a space, and then it's just trying to find how you space. I feel like a routine of being like, okay, I'm going to do half an hour of this, and then I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
Is probably the way forward for me.
Yeah. I do. Some people put it in their calendars, and that's okay. Like, whatever that you call it, the happy networking hour, happy hour, right? Whatever it is, if we put it in our calendars, we're more likely to do it. I certainly found that to be true for even our fitness routines. Unless we sort of put it as part of our calendars, more often than not, it may not happen. But if you kind of get into that routine, you know that every Friday at 12 o'clock you're going to run, then your mind will start craving for it. Same is true for this. So I think even though it's an art, equally making it scientific and process and tools orientated is amazing. Why not? And use AI, right? So I think that's something which I didn't include on the slides is in terms of generative content. Like, if there can be folks who might be, it may not be a natural skill to write a soft, engaging email, right? So let's start engaging AI, and once it knows the kind of threads you're after, even today in LinkedIn, if I try and post out something, like all of you would know, it tries to reword or wordsmith it for you, and 9 times out of 10, I do like the wordsmithing it's done. Same goes, I think we're in a world where we can start crafting these nice and tactful emails with the help of AI also. So why not? Again, another tool, and put it in our toolkit or process.
Perfect. Martha.
Hiya, I just wanted to say, like, there are many skills people have, and like, definitely I'm lacking the networking skill. And thank you so much for this talk. It was very informative, and definitely quite a few things I didn't consider before. So just wanted to say thank you.
Cheers, Martha. And just an offer from my side for any of you, if you found the chat helpful and you wanted to have a one-on-one conversation, I'm more than happy to do that. We're all part of the same network and here to help each other. So happy to do that if anybody would like it.
Thank you.
Excellent. So thank you very much, Nidhi. Final word from me. We have been very intentional with the way we've built this network, and we've created lots of wonderful places for you to exercise this networking and practice it. So Friday afternoons, 4 o'clock, we have a call that is the friendliest bunch of people you'll ever meet. Drop in. There's no obligation to speak, but you'll find yourself talking naturally. We'll give you the opportunity to introduce yourself, but if you don't want to do that, or you don't want to contribute. Beyond that, that's absolutely fine. But you'll find that people will say things which will resonate with you. You'll see other people getting great advice in that call, so use that space. We've also created in Mighty Networks regional spaces, so you can have people in the same location as you. We've created industry or domain networks, so if you're interested in product or transformation or data, like whatever your niche is, you can find the exact people that want to talk about those things. And the best thing you can do in those spaces is, as Nidhi says, going towards building your personal brand. Find things that you found interesting about those spaces and post them. You know, whether it's your own content you were creating posts or blogs, or whether it's you lifting and shifting something that you've seen elsewhere, and people will then associate that thing with you. There's a guy that posts on LinkedIn who I haven't seen him for a while actually, but he used to post every single day a comic strip about robotic process automation. I've never spoken to this guy in my life, but if I was ever looking for a head of RPA, he's the first person I'd call. And all he's ever done in my eyes is posted a meme about it every single day. But it shows me that he's passionate about that topic, and that was enough for me to to make that connection. So yeah, be active in those spaces, and yeah, just be as visible as possible, really, I'd say. And you'll find that networking will find you then, because people will start the conversation rather than you have to start the conversation.
Couldn't agree more. Absolutely, Kevin.
Excellent. So we're bang on time. Well done, everyone. Great to see you today. Hope you join the other sessions which normally take place again on a Wednesday lunchtime normally, and they're all available in Mighty Networks. So thanks again, Nidhi, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so
for
much,
the
Kevin.
opportunity.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Bye,
Cheers.
everyone.
Bye-bye.